Hello everyone, my name is Carla White Crow, also known as the Dancing Oracle, and this is the second video in a series called Coffee with Carla. Some of you may have seen my video back in January where I shared about my journey into and out of Christianity and how that impacted my personal and professional life. I'll link it below in case you want to watch that. But today I'm going to be talking about my favorite thing, the thing that I am most passionate about, and that is my embodied spiritual dance practice. I'm going to tell you about how I got into the world of spiritual dance, what that journey looked like over the last 20 years, and where that has landed me today. But first, let me give you a little recap. So in my previous video, I mentioned that I graduated from Eastern Michigan University with a degree in dance performance in the spring of 2000. 18 months prior to graduation, I had found myself exploring the intersection between dance and spirituality. Dance was really important to me. It's how I expressed myself, it's how I communicated, and it was also a lot of fun. And spirituality is what gave my life hope and purpose. At the end of my junior year, I had a mystical experience where my dance life and my spiritual life kind of had a head-on collision. And that experience changed the trajectory of my life. I was on stage performing for a grade in my final choreographic project. And while I was dancing, it was as if the room around me just kind of became illuminated and I could see into the spiritual realm. And it was as if I was dancing with spirit or with the divine. And also it was like the movements that I was doing were like bringing things from the spiritual realm into physical form. That experience lit me up, and I just remember feeling so alive. I had to know right away what had happened and how I could experience that again. And so I did a little research. I found a local dance community that was focused on using dance as a form of worship, and they offered events and classes and provided performance opportunities for a wide spectrum of spiritual dance groups and companies. And at that point in my life, I was really interested in choreography. Creating dance works and watching them come alive on stage was something that gave me a lot of joy and I wanted to pursue as a career path. So that organization gave me an opportunity to choreograph and present dance works on stage in my community. And eventually that organization became kind of a launching pad for my own dance company. I also had found my way into a larger community of dance professionals from all over the US and some abroad who shared my Christian faith background. And the events and the opportunities that they offered were more technical in nature, which appealed to me because, I wanted to continue my education and my dance training after college and also explore new ways of artistic expression. And what set this community apart was that their music and their artistic intention and their choreographic themes were all or mostly biblically focused, or about God, or about sharing the gospel of Jesus. And in that season of my life, that was something that was important to me. So those first 10 years post-college, I felt like I was living a little bit in two different worlds because of the unique nature of my work. What I did attracted two different groups of people. There were dancers who were Christian, and there were Christians who loved to dance. And I worked alongside a lot of trained dancers and dance professionals who used the art that they created to honor God and share their faith with the world. But then I also had a lot of friends from my church community who loved moving in worship because it took them to a place of depth that they couldn't quite experience with just singing or contemplation. And they wanted to explore all that movement had to offer in a worship environment. So there was this desire within me to bridge those two worlds on a personal level. You know, I wanted my dance friends to be in church dancing with me on Sunday, and I wanted my church friends to learn how to dance so that maybe they could be a part of my dance company or somehow be a part of my dance world. But on a larger scale, I saw the need for those two different groups of people to come together, or maybe to try and bridge the gap and make the gap smaller between those two different groups of people. In fact, in my 30s, and when I started my dance studio, my Christian dance studio, the tagline was teaching dancers how to worship and worshipers how to dance. And I still love teaching dance. I love teaching jazz, contemporary, hip hop, modern dance technique. And I will often jump at the opportunity to choreograph when it arises. But also, as I've gotten older, I've really gravitated more towards dance as a spiritual practice, and that has become my primary passion. I spent most of my 30s developing a spiritual dance curriculum with over 100 pages of activities and exercises, material to teach spiritual dance to both dancers and non-dancers alike. So let me back up a little and tell you how that material came about. In 2001, I was at a dance intensive, a summer dance intensive, and I took a class from a woman who was teaching what she called prayer dancing. Part of her class consisted of modern dance exercises or improvisational dance techniques, both of which are valuable for deepening into a spiritual dance practice. But as she moved, the thing that kept my interest and piqued my interest the most was the intention that she brought to her movement. She wasn't necessarily moving for the sake of creating art, and it definitely wasn't a performance. She was moving with intention of petitioning the divine to convey a message or bestow a blessing on another human being. And that is prayer. And she was doing it with movement. Like, my mind was blown. At the end of class, she circled us up and had us sit, and she went around and danced a prayer over each one of us. And I watched in awe as we each experienced something that our souls were longing for. And it was done in a way that could be seen and felt on such a deep level. There's actual science behind the idea that visual messages are more impactful and longer lasting than messages that we hear. And I experienced that firsthand in her class. For a long time, that movie in my mind of her dancing her prayer over me, it had a very deep and very long-lasting impact on my personal spiritual journey. And it was in that moment that I realized dance was a powerful tool that could be used in service of the higher good. And that felt like an important realization, one that I knew I needed to explore further. So I brought that practice back home and into my own dance company. My dance company would engage in prayer dancing at the end of most of our rehearsals. And that practice proved to be beneficial for us in so many different ways. In dancing our prayers over each other, We strengthened our group bond, which in turn supported us each individually as we pressed deeper into our connection with Spirit. And then things started to happen. There was a momentum of spiritual energy that we had cultivated, and it was bringing insight and wisdom and knowledge and healing and this like charged group dynamic. And that energy seemed to carry over into our performances. Afterwards, people would come up and share these incredible testimonies of having divine encounters while they were watching us dance. And that was a really exciting season, you know, and also humbling. The longer I spent in the role of teacher and spiritual leader, the more I began to feel the weight of the responsibility I was carrying. Praying over others, even with movement, as a form of ministry, and I was caring for others on a spiritual level. And eventually, I realized that I couldn't carry that all on my own. I needed a way to teach others how to cultivate that connection for themselves. And luckily, I was planted in a church community where I was supported in my mystical movement explorations. In fact, they had a whole language for it, language and vocabulary for the things that I did and taught. And my area of expertise fit nice and neatly into prophetic church culture. So I started labeling what I was doing when I was teaching as prophetic dance. And I was aware that not all churches were on board with prophetic gifts, but I had enough support and enough people interested in what I was doing to continue growing and teaching in that area. I mean, heck, there are churches that don't even support dancing and they believe dancing is sinful. So I decided to just do what I felt led to do, and I trusted Spirit to be my guide in that journey. And so much of what I learned over the years was the result of just trial and error, or spiritual insight that I received from meditative states, or communing with the divine, or just dancing. One of the most important spiritual lessons that I learned along the way was to just ask Spirit for what I need. If I needed insight, if I needed guidance, inspiration, the moment I ask, it usually comes with ease. But that's also the result of 2 decades of cultivating a relationship with Spirit. There's a reason it's called a practice. The more that you engage and practice connecting with Spirit, the clearer your connection becomes, and the easier it is to hear and see and know and feel in the spiritual realm. So what am I up to these days? My favorite way to serve the collective is through an offering that I have called Channeled Movement Transmissions. And this is something that is similar to the prayer dancing that I was talking about, but I am intentionally connecting to the world of Spirit and then pulling messages through from the spiritual plane to be expressed kinetically in the body with movement. That practice is something I consider to be holy. I don't enter into it lightly. I feel like the process of channeling is sacred and ritualistic, and I take that responsibility very seriously. When I'm done channeling, it's up to the sitter or the person receiving the messages to pursue interpretation of those messages, whether that is through them asking Source, their spirit guides, or connecting with their higher self. The process of interpreting those dance messages is what I call dance divination, and that is something I teach in a lot of my classes and events. Sometimes they ask me for interpretation, which I usually only give if Spirit directs me to, because what I've found is it's more meaningful and more transformative if you give yourself space and time to discover those messages for yourself. And that is why I offer a video of the transmission to the client, because it's something they can watch over and over and keep getting something new from it every time. I could also dance my own prayers over someone, and that is something that I absolutely do from time to time, but it's an entirely different type of service that is more along the lines of energetic healing. When I pray for someone, I'm not necessarily seeking insight from Spirit. Sometimes, but not always. Usually when someone asks for prayer, they already know what they need, and they're asking for help in achieving a desired outcome. So in that case, I would offer an energetic healing session where I would tune into the energy surrounding them and either call in what is needed from the world of Spirit using channeled movement, or intuitively create movements that would manipulate the energy around them and help to meet their needs, help them to feel better. And sometimes it's both. For example, if someone feels overwhelmed with intense or what they perceive to be as negative emotions, then I would engage in movement to help carve out space around them, to release the pressure or the intensity of what they're feeling. Then I would ask Spirit what they need and use a different kind of movement to call that shift in and bring that new, more desired energy into their energetic field. So those are two types of one-on-one work that I currently offer. The latter carries a bigger impact, I think, if it's done in person, but I will offer distance energy work if requested. I also am available to teach classes and workshops and hold online and in-person spiritual gatherings. I can customize the content of any of those events to include a variety of topics about embodied spirituality, including dance divination, movement as a tool for psychic development, or elemental dance magic, which is where we learn how to move through the 4 different elements, and if there's time, each of the zodiac signs as well. I am also a certified journey dance guide. Journey dance is a practice where you learn to connect with emotions that are stuck within your energetic body and move them out through creative expression and movement-oriented storytelling. So that's a lot of information. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I would love to connect with you online. My social profile links are listed in my bio or below. If you want more information about what I do, there is a blog on my website, www.thedancingOracle.com. You can also view a couple guides that I've created on my Instagram profile. If you want to book me for a one-on-one service or group event, just send me an email. Again, that's linked below. Either way, I hope to connect with you soon, whether that is online or in person. So, bye for now.